Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Tara Garcia and I'll be presenting Say It or Display It, what really helps children read. So looking at today's learning objectives, we'll be taking an overview of various social context factors that impact a child's home literacy environment. We'll be exploring verbal versus nonverbal communication during reading activities with parent and child relationship, and we'll be highlighting cultural differences. So taking a look at various social context factors, Nino in 1980 found that mothers from lower socioeconomic status groups engaged in fewer teaching behaviors during shared reading compared to mothers from middle class groups. So numerous studies have documented differences in the pattern of book ownership and also frequency of shared reading between lower versus higher socioeconomic families. So in looking at how socioeconomic status impacts a small child directly, they've been known to have lower letter knowledge and also phonological sensitivity, and their parents might not exhibit teaching behaviors, thereby prepping them for future academic experiences and enhancing that positive learning experience, either due to the fact that the parents haven't had experience being taught themselves by their own parents, or also there could be issues with just not having enough time. And also a child not being exposed to print as much because they don't own as many books can potentially be an issue because of financial hardship. Dr. Adams in 1990 estimated that the typical middle-class child enters first grade with 1,000 to 1,700 hours of one-on-one picture book reading, whereas a child from a low-income family averages just 25 hours. So now taking a look at nonverbal communication versus verbal communication, there are some nonverbal communication cues that are favored, such as sitting on mom's lap or allowing the child to turn the page to a book themselves and kind of taking control and taking that initiative from a young age. But really what's favored is verbal communication and specifically dialogic reading. Dialogic reading occurs when adults use techniques such as questioning or prompting to encourage a child to actively participate in telling a story themselves. It also offers children expansions on the story to give elaboration or enhancement to their reading experience. They can also recast or reframe the story if it's maybe not clear to the child what's happening, and they can also offer positive commentary about the story. And lastly, they can progressively raise the bar for the child's current independent level of story comprehension and reading skill. So we always want to keep culture in mind as far as the different students that walk into our classroom and different walks of life. Different cultures have a different way of doing things, and that includes their learning process. So in China, for example, they're very comfortable with allowing academic institutions to handle both Chinese and sometimes even English literacy in their school environment, while American cultures obviously place a little more responsibility within the home and ask that the parent prep the child for their learning environment. So that's something for us to kind of keep in mind when we have children from different cultures coming in. Another thing to keep in mind is overall, more verbal interactions during parent-child reading contribute to greater growth in children's language abilities. The lower verbal exchange in parent-child dyads in second language specifically is usually either because of discomfort in using the English language, they're not quite comfortable with being fluent in English yet, or there's a special emphasis on learning through print, either because print is more concrete and there's less room for error with print knowledge, or because they have minimized the effects of parent-child reading on children's language skills. And maybe culturally, like we talked about earlier, parent-child relationship isn't really emphasized in the learning process. So these are kind of questions to ask, or maybe things to become aware of, depending on who is in your classroom. Here is a list of my resources. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope that we work together a little bit differently.